Right, welcome. Welcome to the SitRep. Today is the 7th of May 2022, and this is the situation report. The situation in the world right now, what's going on as far as I see it. There are certainly other takes on this, other perspectives, and I would welcome you to go and immerse yourself in those perspectives as well. But this one is my perspective. So this is where I go through the news stories that I've seen in the last 24 hours and kind of pick out things that are interesting to me, and probably from the perspective of being a prepper, or more in the mindset of disaster or emergency preparedness, and talk about what we can do, and particularly what we can do as Aussies. There is certainly plenty of information out there if you are in the UK or especially in the US on prepping, but it's pretty limited here in Australia. So that's why I'm throwing this noise at you. All right. Thank you for joining me today. Already quite a few people here on the Instagrams and on the YouTubes. So thanks. Thanks, guys. Good morning. Hope you're well. All right, where we're going to start off today is we're starting in the Europe theatre. By the way, it's cold here, yes. Again, winter has come. I hope you're all busy gardening at the moment. Well, not right now, obviously you're listening to me, but over the last couple of days, weeks, months, I hope you've been gardening, and if you're not, get in the garden. Start growing your own food. All right, over to Europe. Let's talk about some things. Let's talk about NATO. Let's talk about countries joining NATO. So we've got Sweden has asked for security assurances if they join NATO. Essentially, they're saying, look, if we do this, if we go down this NATO path, we want some sort of assurance, especially from the US, that you're going to protect us. Because as soon as they do that, they obviously open themselves up to attack from Russia. In response to them joining NATO, because Russia doesn't really want that. Surprise, surprise. And Finland has come out and said, look, the biggest assurance you can give us is by ratifying it nice and quick, i.e. When we say, hey, can we come into NATO, you say yes. So that's what Finland's doing. They're pushing for that kind of angle, saying, let us in nice and quick. All indications from what I'm looking at look like Sweden and Finland will be part of NATO in the not too distant future. So that is going ahead full guns blazing. The only thing counter to that I saw is that the ruling party in Sweden appears to be split. So Sweden has a very long history of being militarily neutral, not really stepping in on one side or the other in any conflict that's happened in modern history. And so at least half their party is saying, hey, I think we should stick with that. We should stick with the neutrality. We should just not really, jump on either side. A bit like, Sweden's known for it, but not known for it. Like, people don't really think about Sweden being a neutral country. We usually, when you say neutral, you think Swiss. And it was very interesting from my perspective, at least, seeing that this whole conflict came up and the Swiss were like right on the front foot. They were like, nah, Russia bad. We're in it. Sanction them, like make them hurt. Russia's the worst thing ever. And for somebody who's supposedly a neutral country, I thought that was very aggressive stance for them to take. So Sweden's still kind of, there's a little bit of dragging the feet, or not really the feet, the toes, I guess. There's some people in Sweden who do not want this to necessarily happen, this jump into NATO to happen. But it looks like, the trend that I'm looking at looks like they're going to go into NATO in the not too distant future. Also in Sweden, I just like to throw this sort of stuff up as well. The Prime Minister came out and she said integration has failed after migrant riots. So essentially, what you've got there is a situation. That's my breakfast. Just spilled over here. Essentially, what you've got there is a country that has a pretty open migration policy. They're allowing a lot of people in. from the outside perspective, I haven't looked at the numbers or the statistics on this, but from the outside perspective, it looks like they've also brought in a lot of people from a certain religious background or religious faith that isn't the standing religion in Sweden, being Christianity, and that has caused some friction. But from a purely statistical standpoint, you look at any country ever from any historical record that has had a high amount of immigration without overt integration into the society, and there has always been problems. There's always been a rise in riots, in attacks, in crime. All these things always go up, correlated to into immigration, correlated to immigration, I should say. And that's like I've said this in the past, and I've said this for many, many years, and a lot of people get really uptight about it. I'm like, hey, this is just actually statistic. This is numbers. All I'm reporting. I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm not saying do it, don't do it. I'm just saying, look, that's the facts of what happened. So Sweden's feeling that at the moment. We also saw probably about 10 years ago, but really started coming mainstream 5 years ago, was the rise of the right-wing radical groups within Sweden that started rising up in response to this. And that's generally how things go. You see that open immigration anywhere in the world. And I'm just saying this as, again, an eye-opening sort of thing for a lot of people. I think a lot of people think that, it'll just be okay if we just open borders and let all the people in, and we all just live together, and we're rich countries and we can just let everyone in, and they'll get it, they'll integrate into us. That actually doesn't generally happen without some pretty strong kind of culture, I guess, for them to be held in. So anyway, they've also what the PM was saying, that their society, Swedish society, was too weak. So listen to this languaging, because this is actually the quote. Our society was too weak, while money for the police and social services too little. So, read between the lines of that, if you will. You got your PM saying our society is weak and that there's not enough money going into security services, police services, and social services. So that's to me, that's pretty strong socialist rhetoric that I'm seeing there coming out of Sweden, which, also about to join NATO. Another interesting thing, the other side of this too, is the migrant riots. And I've said this before, almost every day now, talking about riots, different riots that are going on in the world. And I have mentioned this, that in mainstream media, you may not see riots going on, or you may see them here or there, i.e. you'll see them in the US. Boom, US riots, they're happening, and they are happening, definitely. But they're also happening all throughout the world right now. And there is definitely a correlation between food and civil unrest that has been proven time and time again. And as we go forward, what we're going to see is more and more of these sort of civil unrest things happening throughout the world. It's not necessarily getting thrown in our faces like what's happening in the US at the moment, but if you dig a little bit, you will find that there are a lot of civil unrest issues or situations going on in the world right now. Not quite, I don't think it's quite at the level of 2019. 2019, they were happening, they were widespread all over the world. I think it was the most riots happening at any one time in recorded history. I don't know if it's at that level yet, but it's definitely getting up there. All right, what else is happening in Europe? Bulgaria and Czech Republic join the growing list pushing for exemptions on Russian oil embargo. So this Russian oil embargo has been picking up steam. EU's been wanting to ratify it, saying, yep, sanctions number 6, we're going to cut out all Russian oil to everyone in Europe, and we'll really punish those Russians now. Hungary led the way and said, no, not going to happen. We're not going to sign off on shit until you let us buy this oil for a lot longer. And they said, we'll give you a year. And they said, give us 5. That's how it's going to be. Again, I think there's this like unicorn farts and rainbow Skittles idea of the world that we can like just, we're going to change the world and we're going to do it in the next 24 hours. Things don't work that way, unfortunately. We can't just flick a switch and go to solar power or something and think that everything's going to be fine, because it's not. We're very, very dependent on fossil fuels. The world is addicted to fossil fuels, and we're not getting out of that addiction anytime fast. It's not going to take days or weeks or months. It will be years, and it will be a concerted effort for years too, the kind of concerted effort that we don't have at the moment. So maybe this could be the instigation for it to actually roll on. But at this stage, there's a lot of pushback against this cutting of, hey, morning, Steve Garrington. There's a lot of pushback against these embargoes that are happening right now as countries actually, as the rubber hits the road, as their populations start to look at it and go like, hang on, we're the ones who are going to cop this. We're the ones who are going to go cold. We're the ones who can't drive our cars. We're the ones who are going to have our cost of living, which is already going through the roof, go up exponentially higher because fuel costs more. And I've said this a million times before, but I'll say it again. Fuel affects everything. Okay, fuel doesn't just affect the cost of fuel. It's not just like, oh, well, I can't drive to work, or it's more expensive for me to drive around. The food is grown with fuel. The food is pulled out of the ground with fuel. The food is shipped to a processing plant, which is powered by fuel. It is then shipped out to your supermarket by fuel. All these things, all that is cost in the actual system there, and it is a cumulative cost. So the end product is a 10-cent rise in fuel, a sustained 10-cent rise in fuel will mean a $25, $30, $1 rise in a head of lettuce in your supermarket eventually. So this is essentially what's on the line here. Again, this is another thing that feeds into that food shortage crisis that we're having, that I keep talking about, how it is being attacked or eroded from every single angle now. There's not a single angle that our food system is not being fucked with at the moment. So some strong language actually came out. The Hungarian PM came out and said, look, these Russian oil sanctions are going to be equivalent to a nuclear bomb on our economy, on Hungary's economy. So that's one of the reasons why they're really pushing back on this. And I just thought it was interesting too, this rhetoric, nuclear bomb. There's a couple of stories coming out where people are starting to say NATO's not really taking it seriously. They're not taking the threat of Russia seriously. And certainly if you just look at the Western sources of media, the propaganda that's coming out from that side, I would agree with that. They're all like, Russia's done. They're on their last legs. They failed. The whole Ukraine thing is a failure. They're about to capitulate, and our sanctions are crushing them. If you look at Russian side of propaganda, though, you're not seeing any of that. I mean, you are seeing some of that, but you're not seeing it to that level. And the stuff that's sort of floating around in the middle, it doesn't look that way to me. And what I can infer from the information that we're getting out of Ukraine, but it doesn't look like it's going to end very quickly. And it looks like the Russians are quite serious about utilizing whatever means necessary, and whatever means necessary that they have access to is everything. They have nuclear weapons, they have biological weapons, they have chemical weapons, and they can use all of these. Hey, Common Killer, thanks, man. Thanks for the well wishes. So for those who don't know, I'll be talking up at the Free at the Sea event in a couple of hours, 1 p.m. at Bondi up in Sydney. I'll be up there with Lauren, that Insta chick. We'll be up there chatting about all this sort of stuff, or about solutions, about how we can actually step forward as people and look at what we're doing, look at where we're going as a society, and go, hey, we don't need to sit here and whinge and cry and go, this is all bad. We can actually take power ourselves and actually do something about it. Uhtred, son of Uhtred, said, yeah, what about Victorian new amendments to agricultural season destroy powers? So I've been talking about that the last couple of days. That does look a pretty foreboding, I guess, that it could. It's not necessarily written in there that they're going to do that. It just gives them the ability to do that. One of the caveats on it that I put out yesterday was a redaction where I said they can come and get your backyard garden. They can't. It's clearly written in there, not in someone's home. They can't go and do it in someone's home. So, and that's what I encourage people to do: is grow your own food as much as possible and store your own food as much as possible. So, yeah, definitely do that. But it still is a concern, and these sorts of things being written into law under biosecurity is, I guess, the the equivalent of what we've experienced as humans, the food equivalent of what we've experienced as humans over the past 2 years here in Australia. Cool, Steve. I'll see you there today. Han, I wish you could attend too. Would love to see you there, but that's all good. I'm sure there'll be plenty of stuff out there on the interwebs, especially on this platform, about it today. All right, let's jump over into Asia now, because this one really piqued my interest. South Korea joins NATO cyber defense. Ooh, just that little cyber defense part. If it was just the first part, South Korea joins NATO, that would really blow my mind. But they have joined part of NATO, the Northern Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is over the other side of the world, now has a member state from Asia. That's not into NATO, obviously, into their cyber defense, but that is interesting. I think this is something that I've been talking about for a little while. I think NATO is really starting to put its tendrils out into the world, and we've got the UK overtly coming out and saying, "Hey, we think NATO's power should extend down to Southeast Asia and into the South China Sea, into this area." So essentially making NATO a worldwide organization, just not just the Northern Atlantic. And now we've got an Asian member in their cyber defense. It's interesting because I've said this before, with anything cyber doesn't have a front line. The front line is everywhere. It's right here, what you're interacting with. This is the front line of cyber defense. This is where the war is happening. So it makes sense that anyone could join that area from any part of the world, because anyone can be attacked from any part of the world. However, I think this is just an interesting little step again, where we've got a section of NATO that now a non-NATO area, geographical area, has joined. So South Korea, part of that. What happens next? I think we'll start to see other countries. I wouldn't be surprised if Australia joins this sort of thing in the not too distant future. Even though we're actually part of other organizations that would, kind of make this a bit of a moot point, or at least redundant. It just wouldn't surprise me for the sake of optics. Of look at this, look at how powerful NATO is now. But an interesting step. Okay, so what's happening in China? So obviously this sort of stuff is happening because China, the threat of China going into Taiwan, Chinese power just generally across this area of the world, this South Pacific area, with the whole shebang that's going on with Solomon Islands and China and Australia at the moment, causing a lot of tension between all three of those states. If you haven't kept up with the news, Solomon Islands and Australia, the relationship there is not on great ground at the moment. But this is another interesting thing that popped up. Beijing orders stress test in preparations for Russian-style sanctions. So key Chinese state agencies have reported being instructed to formulate responses if Beijing is slapped with similar sanctions to those imposed on Russia by the US. This is coming out of The Guardian, UK. That's really interesting, is it not? Why would China be preparing for sanctions that are like Russian sanctions? Well, what did Russia do? They invaded Ukraine. What are we looking at China doing? Invading Taiwan. I mean, US has come out and said, hey, if you keep supporting Russia and going behind our back by buying Russian oil and coal and whatever else is coming out of Russia right now, then we're going to slap some sanctions on you. So it could just be that, but I think China plays a long game. They're looking at it and they're going, we know where we're going. We know what's going to happen. Let's make sure that this works. So this is yet another of the pavers put down for China to walk into Taiwan. Their government too has just ordered all their government agencies and state-controlled firms to dump foreign PCs and software. So they've come out to all the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, has come out and said, hey, everyone who is under our umbrella, get rid of all foreign PCs, all foreign computers, all foreign software. It has to be ours. It has to be owned by us and be Chinese. Is this another thing? Are they going, no, we don't want any backdoors. We don't want any spyware. We don't want any viz. We also don't want any reliance on any other country. That's what I'm reading in this. But also, another thing that I'm reading with it is that the effect of them actually saying this shot stocks up in the Chinese tech sector. So the Chinese tech sector shot up immediately after these were announced, because obviously now they've just put a monopoly on it, where Chinese companies who create PCs, who create software, are like, sweet, well, we've got a customer that can't go anywhere else. They're coming to us. So excellent, we're going to make money. But yeah, again, these are signs. I'm always looking out for this big picture sign, what's going on here. Us as Australians, I think this is something we do need to keep our eye on, because I think a war breaking out here in this part of the world can have significant effects to our daily lives. Maybe not in the short term, but I think it will in the mid to long term. And so we need to start thinking about that and start preparing ourselves for that possibility to actually occur. Actually, I want to talk about that. That's not interesting. In Australia, well, still technically part of Australia. It's called Western Australia. It's probably going to secede at some point, I'm sure. But the Minister of Police in WA has come out and has just put online, made an interactive, high-quality mapping data and imagery online, which shows the exact location of about 350,000 firearms. So these are about 90,000 people who own these firearms, and he's just put up a map saying, well, it's very unsafe, I feel, that we have weapons out there that we don't know where they are. So I think people should know where they are, because this is the greatest part of it. Because there are illegal weapons out there. So there are criminals who are stealing these weapons. And so we want to know where these weapons are, because that will then make it less likely that they'll steal them. If I put the information of exactly where they are out there. This breaks my brain a little bit, apart from pissing me off, because I am a gun owner, and I would be fucking horrified if somebody started advertising where I store my guns, or the exact location of where my weapons are. I think that is inviting theft, that is exacerbating a problem, and it is punishing people who did the right thing, who jumped through all the fucking hoops and paid all the money in order to legally own a firearm in Australia. And it's not exactly a simple task to own firearms in Australia. You can do it, despite what other countries say about us. We're like, oh, you lost all your guns. We didn't lose all our guns. I own guns. I go hunting with them. It's just difficult to have, and they're not particularly, like, they're all bolt action rifles, or limited in some way. But that's fine. That's the rules we work with. So we jump through the hoops, and we do all the stuff, and we do all the testing, and we pay this person and that person and that person and that person, and then eventually we pay somebody to get an actual fucking gun. And then they go and do this to us. This is fucking outrageous. Like, what the hell? This is a total and utter breach of privacy in my mind. And I think anyone in WA should be up in arms about this. In fact, if I was in WA, I would just be moving. I would be like, no, or probably even looking at doing some sort of legal recourse against this. So, woke up to that this morning and was just like, unbelievable. Quote, with 350,000 firearms in the community, many of them probably are lying around just waiting to be stolen by criminals. Well, they are now, because you just fucking told them where they are. That's a Minister of Police. Good on you, Paul Papilia. What kind of fucking name is that anyway? Paul Papilia. I shouldn't pick on people individually, but this guy sounds like a dickhead. So I will. All right, anyway. Woosa. Calmness. What's happening in food stuff? Global grain reserves extremely low, will be depleted for years, warns top fertilizer boss. So another one of the fertilizer bosses come out and said it's going to take about 2 to 3 years to replenish our grain stores at the moment, our global grain stocks. This is not new news. This is stuff that I've been reporting on all the time. I just like to let people know, hey, this stuff's happening. It has deeper effects than we think about. So We're not going to be able to print more money and just get more food. We're not going to be able to call mummy and daddy or beg the government or riot or do anything and get more food. The only thing that's going to get us more food is us actually growing more food. So get out there and do it. Yeah, exactly. Reverse psyops to get rid of the firearms. More will get stolen, and then they'll go, "Oh, well, we need more regulations, and we're going to have to ban more weapons," and blah blah blah. It's just a self-licking ice cream, that one that they've set up, and I don't think we should stand for it. US nationwide baby formula shortage hits shocking levels, sparking panic among parents. So. A number of stores came out. I think it was Walmart came out first and said, "Hey, we're like dangerously low on baby formula at the moment," and that was, I want to say, 2 weeks ago. So what they're looking at now, retail location across US, about 40% of the top selling infant formula products were not in stock. Everyone raises their child differently, I guess. Some people have to use baby formula; they've just got no choice for various reasons. But this is pretty in your face, and I think this freaks people out too, because this is babies, children, and pets, dogs. Freaks people out more than almost anything. So this is something to keep your eye on. Maybe a hole in the market for wet nurses. Could start bringing them back. And more about fertilizer prices. So soaring fertilizer prices is producing food security threat around the globe. Food prices edge closer to records. So they're creeping up again. A number of crises. I actually like this story. It was, I can't remember where it was. Some weirdo organization that I was looking at. I go through a whole heap of like weird sort of non-mainstream media stuff. So if they stopped inducing women, cutting them open, then sending them back to work, baby formula issue would be null and void. Yes. Kind of agree with you on that one. So, I mean, we've had a number of shortages in the system that we've seen probably in the last 18 months. It's been exacerbated and it's been in people's faces. But until now, like, I think people haven't cared that much. So we've had things like lumber. Unless you're building something, or work in the construction industry, you probably didn't know. Silicon chips. Maybe you're buying a car and you couldn't get the car, or there was a bit of a lag in some of the electronics you bought. Wasn't that big of a deal to most people. Nickel, most people were like oblivious to it. But now we're seeing fertilizer. So the main fertilizer that we use in the world at the moment, NPK, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. All three of those things are getting affected in different ways, but those combined together, what we use to create NPK fertilizer, in massive shortage and about to be much more in shortage. It's gone up 125% in 1 year, and it's gone up something like 20% this year alone already. So, this is trouble. This is trouble. I was talking about the fuel increasing food price. Well, this is the stuff they use to grow food. At the end of the day, if they can't afford this stuff, they're just going to go, okay, we're not going to use fertilizer, which means their crop yields are going to go from, at 100% bumper crops down to 80 or 60 or 40% of what they could grow. That's not enough food for enough humans, and that's going to cause issues. So again, this is just your daily reminder to get out and garden and start planting food and start looking after your own survival situation, taking agency and responsibility for your own life, and not just sitting there like a baby bird expecting food to rain down on you from the gods above in our parliament, because it's not going to happen. We need to take control of our own food system as much as we can. It is difficult. I will admit this. It is extremely difficult, and I certainly do not do it. Grow 100% of my food. No way. But I'm moving towards that, and every day I'm trying to plant more, and every day I'm trying to do other things. I'm trying to think about other ways I can store food, setting up more hunting grounds and talking to more people and connecting with more farmers, local farmers, and buying their produce and buying their animals. So this is the sort of stuff that I really suggest people start thinking about and really start getting into. This sort of stuff that I might be even talking about today at the Free at Sea event with Lauren, 1 p.m. at Bondi. If you can make it up there, would love to see you guys there. But apart from that, I'm going to cut it there because I actually have to get myself ready and get in the car and start driving. Thanks for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Thanks for all the comments that you're chucking up. Really love it. Really love it. If you've got anything else, if you see any news that you think is interesting, send it through to me. If you've got any little wins in your garden or in your preps, or you want to discuss anything, you got any questions, send them through to me. Love to see it. Apart from that, I'm going to head up to Sydney now via Lauren, pick her up on the way, and hopefully do another SitRep tomorrow. So keep prepping, guys. Get out in the garden today. I think it's going to be a sunny day. It is where I'm at least. Cold but sunny. And Semper Paratus.